All right, cool. I am muted. All right, we're back, and I'm actually okay. Now you can actually hear me. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the fifth live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. So I've already said all this before, but I'll say it again because you didn't get to hear it. Don't worry about that. Nothing happened. Anyway, today, what are we talking about? I have Kage here with me again today, and we are discussing a little bit further on the topic that we talked about last time he was here, about building inside of D&D. Basically, we're going to be talking about what we as DMs allow in terms of mechanics and allow in terms of gameplay for our players to create things inside of the realm. This is going to be a multiple part series because there's a lot of things to talk about between bases, buildings, like towns, even kingdoms, or villages at least. And then we have things like items, weapons, magical items. But I think today what we really want to focus on as a good foundation is talking about what we do to help allow players to create spells. Now, this is a little bit more advanced than most players will have at first. I think most players would be starting off building and creating items, maybe weapons, and then maybe even going to bases. But this one is going to be a good foundation to talk about because it's going to go into other things about our realm that talk more deeply into the mechanics that we both play into. So things like, in-game physics and the way that we do our own balancing. And that's what we want to talk about this one today. And then in other streams, we'll go ahead and talk about things like, how we allow them to, build up locations, whether that be a physical building or like a town, and then how they can go about creating in-game items, both via RP as well as just how they are going to be built mechanically. But without further ado, let me go ahead and get Kage in here. Hello, and welcome.
Well, hello, friends. Thank you for having me again. I am, again, very excited to be here. This is going to be a good time. I am very excited about our topic today. We're doing a little pre-discussion beforehand, and I was just getting all antsy. I'm like, yo, we gotta do this.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, and we only maybe have about an hour and a half or less, so we'll get right into it. So the main topic for today that we wanted to go over is basically creating things in game, and today we want to focus on like spell crafting. How and why and if you should allow players to create spells in your game, and what does that mean? So obviously we work in totally different realms. We have different in-game physics, we have different mechanics that we go under, and we have different ways that we balance our game. So we both agree that allowing this level of creation is a good thing, giving players the ability to create things like spells, or even modify current spells. But a level at which they're allowed to do so is really what I think is really specific to each DM, right? Because how your game uses magic could be vastly different, and no one would say that you should just let them willy-nilly just create anything that they want, but how you go about implementing it and what they should get out of it and what the realm should get out of it, right? Like, if you just give it to them versus having them role play for it, having them kind of craft it in terms of like how the game would normally have it, in terms of like, the rules, how it works, what it needs, the components that it needs. These are all things that I always like to think about, right? Like, how far do I make it a challenge versus how far does it feel like it's a chore? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because that's my balancing. I always want to balance it. I want it to be fun. I want it to be a challenge, but I don't want it to be a chore. I don't want you to basically write me a chapter from a book module explaining it, but I also want more than I want it to do X, Y, Z. But yeah, what are your thoughts on, like, where do you come from in terms of, like I said, these are the things I think about. I think about how am I going to implement it, what does it mean for them, and how the balancing works. But what are your thoughts on allowing this agency?
Again, my understanding of these types of things is ever evolving, but so in order to articulate this, I'm going to have to talk about something that I don't think I've mentioned before. And that is, we all know about, your character's level. But what I want to talk about is the player's level. And in your world, when gaming with you, each one of your players, you talk about them in the sense of like veteran gamers versus beginner gamers, or seasoned gamers, people that have been in it for a little while, they start learning, but veteran gamers, they know how to work the system, they know how to play, they know how to
more
think,
of the ins
create.
and outs.
Exactly, right? And so for me, it has a lot less to do with what's going on with your character and a lot more to do with what's going on with you as a player. How much do you understand about what you're messing with? How much do you understand about what magic is in this world? How much do you understand about what you're trying to do? And honestly, it's more, it goes a little bit more towards what's the intent of this player. Not even the character. Are you out here just trying to be the most OP person in the world? Or are you actually interested in engaging with the mechanics? Are you actually interested in learning what's going on? Because I'll tell you what, I don't care if you're level 1 character. I will let you play with whatever's out here. Now, I will tell you, at level 1, you do not have a lot of the capabilities necessary to have full control. So what you might do might not be what you expected, but the ability for you to play with it is there. And when you do types of things like this, like I'm the type of person who I want to give you something as a gift for engaging with my mechanics, because that's what I enjoy most.
Right.
And so when people engage with it at any level, I'm like, yo, I want to give you what it is that you're looking for. I also want to give you consequences to know that it's not going to be easy every single time. It's not going to just be gifted to you every single time you try this. And so just trying to spam it all day long is not going to get you the desired result. But I do want you to know it's possible.
Right.
And that if what you're trying to do is create art here, with your experimentation, with your playing with it, if you're actually trying to have some character development, it's more about what's going on with you and your character rather than me as a player just wanting to be uber powerful and just make myself the baddest mother out here. Like if that's why you're here playing with it, I'm here for it. And I will give you the tools necessary to do it. I will tell you, hey, this is the types of things, these are the places you can go, because you'll be motivated to do those types of things because you're building a character.
Right. And I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you've said. I think we just like everything, we're on the same page. We just approach it differently because I'm on the same page as in terms of I want the same result as you do, but the roadblocks I would say that I put in the character's way are for the same reasons, just not the same thing. Like you were saying, you care more about like the player's level, which I love that concept. And I take that into account. If you're a brand new player in my realm and it's like your third gaming session, you're like, hey, I want to create something. Hey, pump the brakes. Like it's your third day. You do. It's not that I won't allow you to start, but don't expect that you're just going to lay something on the table that we're just going to roll with because
for sure.
I need to know that you have more in mind than just I want this, therefore give it.
Exactly.
Because I've seen that in a lot of games where, especially you see this a lot of online, like in Discord servers, where I was in so many games where people they would come in, they'd be very new, but they would make these like high-end demands, and it's like they just wanted to go for spectacle. They didn't really want to add anything to the gameplay or to anybody's fun. They just wanted to come in and make a spectacle and then just be like, hey, look how cool I am because I can think of these things. But it's like, that's fine and all, but that's not the direction that I encourage. I encourage kind of like you, where I want the player to be at a certain point that I feel that they understand what they'll be doing, but I never stop them from beginning that process, right? If at day one someone asks me, I want to create this, hey man, here are the stepping stones that you have. You're just not going to be on stepping stone, 9 out of 10 day one.
Right.
But here are the stepping stones. And if you can make that leap to step 1 and justifiably so, I'm going to let it happen. Like, I'm going to be fair. But I'm not just gonna. Not every player is equal. Let's put it that way. Not every player is equal. Every character is. Every character in the realm is on an equal footing in terms of how the world works.
For sure.
But every player has to put in a little bit more if they want to. Because again, I want to encourage people to add to my realm. I just don't want people to add for them own self.
That's the key. Is they're adding to it and not just trying to take.
And that's why, for me, instead of making it a system in place of when they would be allowed to, that's why the things that I have in place, such as, okay, if you want to create something, there are a few things that you have to do. Now, if you're a newer player, these things are going to be a lot harder to do. If you are a seasoned or veteran player in my realm, they're going to be so much easier to do because you're in with it. You already understand the terminology, you understand the lingo, you understand how things work, and you understand how I operate. So that's my equal playing field. Just like you, instead of saying, hey, it's your day one, you can't, I'm going to give you the same rule sets that I would give my veteran player, but the difference is it's going to be like handing you a calculus book at, freshman year and going to, a math major and handing him the same calculus book. Same reference material, it's the same steps, but you're going to approach it a lot differently because your experience and your knowledge is just not on par. But again, same end result is what I want. I want people to have put in the time to want it for the right reasons, but I also want them to understand what they're doing. I don't want people to just have something because it sounds cool. I want them to understand, I want them to acknowledge and actually, feel proud about having it. It's one thing to say, hey, I want this cool weapon that does X, Y, Z, or I want a spell that can do all this fancy stuff, but it's but will you really appreciate it? Or are you just using it before it's spectacle? Just so, didn't it sound cool when I it's yeah, it did sound cool. But that's not the kind of gameplay I like. I don't like things that just sound cool because that's basically just playing a tabletop anime. I mean, in reality, that's what I watch anime for the spectacle.
Mm.
That's what it's there for.
The coolest explosions, the most powerful weapons.
It's that build up and that ultimate release. But the difference is, and I think a lot of people can agree, we all don't. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that were not fans of filler episodes in a good anime. In a really solid anime, those filler episodes with characters no one cares about or things that just do not add at all to the story, we know why they're there. It's because the manga hasn't been updated, or because the writers just haven't had anything good, or they need to expand it the full season. Whatever the reason, we don't want that in anime. So in terms of playing D&D, if I just want that spectacle, it's not as rewarding versus when you earn it. But again, I'm not watching an anime. I watch it. I don't want to have that filler episode, but in D&D, I think it's more important.
I think when you're watching something like anime, you're in it for immediate gratification.
That's the point. Yes, good. Thank you. That's the point I'm trying to get to.
But when you're doing something, when you're building something, when you're creating something, it's not just about immediate gratification, just getting what you want right away. Sometimes a big part of really connecting with your art is the time it takes to work it out, the time it takes to figure it out. And if your goal is to just have and to get and to become, then all right, cool. But what are you really getting out of it? Just like you're talking about.
Yeah, you get the moment. In that moment, you got exactly what you wanted, but you don't get to walk away with more. You don't get to walk away with having left a mark. You don't get to walk away with calling something your own, and you don't really get to walk and again, this is in our perspective, of course. There's a lot of people who just are no, man, I that's all I want. That's where it's if that's the way you play, that's great. But this is that whole concept for us is deeper gaming is really getting into all of those aspects. And again, I've seen games where it's almost too much, where it's almost too realistic, where I feel I'm spending more hours doing this than I am taking care of myself and doing laundry. It's I don't want that level of gameplay, but that's my balance. So, you were saying,
sure.
You want people to have the right reasons. That's why I put the challenges and the stepping stones to get there, is because if you're truly serious about it, these won't be challenges. They will just be a checklist of things to do. Whereas if you're looking for that immediate gratification, these things are going to feel like a chore.
You're going to enjoy the process. You know what I mean? when somebody like I can't tell you when somebody's like in the zone like drawing or in the zone doing something and they're just like pouring out whatever it is, like they're enjoying the process. They're not just like in a hurry to get the thing done. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they like drawing, they like doing it. Like when I'm playing a video game, you know, sometimes I feel like that in and of itself, the playing of the game can be its own form of art. Going through the process, doing the missions, exploring the, like, that's why you don't want stuff spoiled for you. You don't want to just know the answer already. Like, I want to go through the process, and I really enjoy in D&D getting to go through the process, whatever it is, you know, go through the process to see and discover and achieve whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve with my character or with my players.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I think when it comes to creating things for DMs, I think a big question is, you know, what is your investment? Because do you want things to just be for the players, or do you want things to be for your world or for the greater, right? So if you're just playing a module and a character wants like an item or a spell or something that is specific to just that run through, you know, that you could probably be a lot more lenient. You could probably be a lot more creative and allow for a lot more. But when you do have those like ongoing campaigns where it affects either other gaming groups or it affects other larger plot points, those are the times where I think these are those opportunities for DMs to get creative and have like basically things that they can come back on, for instance, one thing I like to do is because I have all of my gaming groups in essentially the same place, same time, they're all just kind of fluctuating throughout each other. If someone goes to a certain place that tends to be frequented by other gaming groups and you have something created there, those people now have knowledge of it. It's not that that item would be now for sale freely, but if another gaming group needs something similar made or something, I can now take that and make their ability to find something. Like, let's say you're the first person to try to find something and you want it to be made out of a specific material. If you can find it in a certain location, I take that into account. So that is now a location that that material can be found in for other people. Or if you found a leather worker and you had him do something he's never done before, he now has a new skill set. So in the future, that skill set specifically may not be used, but I can now say, hey, there's a leather worker here who knows more than the average one.
And you might start seeing that thing that you created elsewhere. Maybe he starts marketing it to other people now that he knows how to do it.
And especially if you really want to get into it, I mean, you can own things in my realm. Like you can be, the one known for certain things. And so, as a DM, I would challenge anybody. It's like, if you're going to have your players create things, ask yourself first, though, like, what is your investment? Because if you don't have that level of investment, like we do, then just don't bother, right? Like, let them have it for face value. They want a certain weapon that does a certain thing, let them have it for face value. But if you want that, like, expansion and you want that ripple effect, and you want that player to be more in tune with it, that's why I like making it a little bit more difficult than just doing a write-up. Because I love asking questions. Like when someone says, hey, I want this item and it does this. Cool, what would it be made out of? First question I love to ask. What components is it made out of? And not just like, well, wood, but I mean, like you wanted it to do all of these things. Well, you can't have it do all of these things with one material. So once you start asking those kind of questions, I mean, I'm not expecting them to, go, unless they want to do full on like schematic and just write everything out. I just want to challenge them to do more than give me a base description of what it does. I want them to go out and go, okay, what would it be made out of? And if you can logically give me an idea of normal materials, cool. How would you go about getting it created? I don't expect you to have to RP every piece, but I'm going to make it a little bit RP. Like, okay, well, looks like you're going to need some specialty items. Well, you're going to have to go figure out a blacksmith who can and will do that. And then we'll figure out how much it costs, like based on, negotiation and what all of that stuff is. And maybe you might not be in the location for that. Maybe you're in a rural area that there just isn't a blacksmith that has that skill set. Maybe I have to get you 3 weeks over to the next kingdom. Those are all plot points that I can now expand their adventure on. And yes, it's not instant gratification. It's not that they just get to have this new weapon for the next adventure. But I'm also really big into solo gaming. And if you DMs are out there and you're trying to find ways to get like me. I love solo gaming. I encourage it with all my players. Even if they're already tied to a party, I will still find ways to do solo gaming. And this can be one of those options. If you're looking to, as a DM, to work with more of your players who want to game more often, but the party can't, all of the group, and you normally have spurts of time, days or weeks in between, when the group does their, their campaign or whatever gaming session they're doing, get the other person together and let them go create something. They can walk away from the group, go to the town over, go talk to that like these can all be solo gaming opportunities, or these can be those things that happen in between if you're the DM who likes to metagame with your players in between gaming sessions. This can be a whole metagame thing. I even built this into when I was running the my D&D Discord. So I had a Discord made for a friend of mine who was out of country who wanted to kind of start gaming with us. So I created a Discord for us, and I made it to where if anybody at any time wanted to game and no one was online, the Discord itself, even with or without me, kind of acted as a way for them to game and do things on the side, like buy items, have things crafted, and create things. And I like that. I like always having these opportunities for the players to game whenever they want, right? It's a little bit harder, like if you're stuck in a dungeon or your party's currently sleeping overnight, but you can still do a dream sequence, you can do a meditation thing, you can have them during their watch, you can have a random wanderer come by and have a conversation. Like I encourage all of those things, but when players want to create something, again, going back to the DM, if you want to be invested, if you want things that are created to be a part of your world, simply just ask questions like, what's it going to be made out of? How would you go about getting these particular items put together? Does your character have enough knowledge to put this together, or would they have to go ask someone and go get knowledge? Like, these are all, every question can lead to a plot point or a gaming opportunity, or just these questions can make them more invested. And as long as they have an answer for it, then great, they have an answer for it. Your level of investment as a DM just decides how much you want to essentially force them to do for it. So
I think
how many NPCs do they have to talk to? How many things do they have to roll for? That's on you and how much investment you as a DM want.
Yeah.
But all these questions can help the player feel more invested in the item they're creating and feel like they own it more, instead of just saying, I want it to do this cool thing.
I think a lot of those questions can help people, honestly, because a lot of times when you want something, it's because it sounds cool in your head. But when you start engaging in that way and asking those questions, there's usually quickly a way for you to find a path to answer those questions. Even if you don't know initially, you can get there, you can walk through it, and then you can and it becomes personal because you attach it to your character and to why they're doing what they're doing. And you be like, oh, remember that town back where I met that one monk dude and he showed me that one thing? Well, that's what I really got excited about. That's when I first learned about that metal, and maybe that metal is how I put it into this sword and turned it in. And then you start connecting all the pieces and bringing all the dots together, and it stops being just I'm out here to be a Pokemon and gotta catch them all and gotta get all the cool things just to have a hoard of stuff in my backpack, rather than being like, yo, this is a dope character, like this is what I want to build.
Right.
And see, I always had a hard time when it comes to, and this is kind of a side note, but when it comes to loot in my game, because I never know what to give my players. Because say you have this like really great holy sword and you find a magical sword in a chest. Do you just get rid of your holy sword and then you use this new sword that has a cool ability because you want the cool? But what about that?
That's
like,
a whole different.
We
could go on such a tangent on that,
but the
like loot and
is...
treasure and the way that you reward your players during adventures. I have some hot takes on that.
Very much so. But
I don't know if they're unpopular opinions, but I've tried it all.
I have some unpopular opinions.
And I'm just saying,
I feel like
I'm not a fan with how most DMs that I've played with. I'm not a fan with how they do their treasure.
I don't know if you'll like the way I have recently started thinking about. I'm gonna do things on that front, but it's. I do believe that it ties in very much to this point, though, because because when you are talking about wanting to create like an item or something that's like personalized to you, you it is something that's like, yo, this is mine, and it helps you find that attachment to it, and like this is something that I almost want to build. And that's a mechanic that I like to add to. If you really want something like that, I'm gonna allow this thing to be able to level up with you, to be able to increase with you, so that you feel like you're not staying stagnant in power. You have this like thing that you used at level 1, and now you're level 20, right? And now you're still using that level 1 item. Like, nobody wants that. But like, if it grows in power and ability with you,
or at least has the opportunity to,
very much
like
so,
something that you can continue to upgrade or hone. And I know, and I'm all about that too. And again, it all comes down to like the different things that we're talking about, right? Because there's a difference between items that you just want to have, right? Like, like we've talked about before, where every time I have a new character, I always have a certain type of kit that I always try to get built in game. That's not anything traditional from any book, but I always try to have like a dagger harness for my rogue characters created in game that allows me to strategically place daggers in certain positions, right? I always try to have that made. I always try to have some form of like the Assassin's Creed dagger, like wrist strap, some form of that created in game, because it's me testing my DMs that I'm playing with, and it's also just something that I always like to have. It's a piece of equipment that allows me roleplay opportunities, right? Like, for instance, I learned about the harness thing, like creating a dagger harness that specifically allows me to place daggers on certain parts of my body just for RP purposes. So regardless of what position my character finds himself in, the idea is that he'll always have a dagger within like hand's reach, right? Whether his hands are behind his back, in front of him, tied up on his chest, whether he's hogtied, the idea is that if they haven't found them all, they are hidden and essentially within reach. Those are all great too. And and it really comes about the effect of the game, right? Like if you just want a different type of backpack that has a different type of strap or you can hold certain things, it's not going to be as game changing, right? Whereas if you want to build a weapon, a little bit more. I mean, mainly just because it's really hard to build a custom weapon in D&D that isn't magical. Like, you really got to think outside the box to create a weapon that does something that, D&D hasn't thought of already. And then going, we can talk about like buildings and hideouts and things like that. But really, what we keep talking about is like, we encourage the building, we encourage these things, and we encourage the character to be connected to it. And we can talk all day about like the different severities of it. But really going into something that truly like is game changing, truly changes not only the gameplay for the characters, but changes their understanding of that gameplay and the behind the scenes, is things of allowing them to create different types of magic, allowing them to alter magic that is currently available, allowing them to create their own types of magic, and not just magical items. Now, magical items, creating those, I think, actually is a lot easier, because in terms of creating a magical item, you essentially have the plethora of all magic that's created, and any combination of that can go into a weapon, right? Like, the idea of a magical weapon is just essentially what combination of shit hasn't gone together yet. And I love that, but that's basically just finding combinations of things, because really anything you think of is just a combination of things that already exist. Whereas creating a spell, that can be in and of itself something brand new and unique. You could say that it's just a combination of things, but that's where I think it's on the DM to decide how do they want to explain it, right? Do you allow people to create something from the ground up like a spell? Or is it that there is a foundation, here's what exists, and anything you create that's unique is simply a combination of that? And I'm really curious, like, how do you, as a DM, I know how I see it, and we can get into that, but how would you approach it? Because this has always been something on my mind, right? Is when we're talking about creating, there really is two different types of approaches. Like, we as DMs, we're the creators. We create. So I know a lot of DMs, it's not so much like I don't think this is a conscious decision, but I know a lot of DMs, in their mind, the creation stops with them. So I'm really curious, when you allow a player to make something in your realm, I'm wondering what side of the argument are you on? Do you truly allow pure creation, or are you in that area where everything's already created, all you're doing is combining what's already there?
this is here's the deal. Yes, and none of the above. Basically, so the way I look at it is it's so I don't know if I've told you, but my realm is called the Cinaverse, right? And that's because anything you can ever have seen in media, like any anime, any movie, the Marvel series, whatever, that all exists here, right?
Somewhere in some form.
Somewhere in some form that exists in my realm,
Because
right?
if I understand it correctly, yours operates in kind of a sense where it's kind of like mine, where it's in its own realm, its own thing. You're not playing in like Greyhawk or anything like that, but it not like mine in the sense of whenever you get together, your gaming group kind of essentially has those like campaigns where each time they're playing, most of the time it's different scenarios. It's all ongoing. It's all one thing to the next. But instead of saying going from one town to the next, you're essentially kind of like going from a different type of reality to another one that is based on different cinematic universes. Is that kind of how I've understood it?
Kind of, not really. Here's the deal. It is like if you took like every piece of cinema, threw it in a blender, chewed it up, and just vomited it out and started creating and crafting things. So there's like stuff's gonna be mixed in with
So it
all
really
other
do you remember
else.
the old movie The Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Possibly.
So it's the one where the kid goes to the theater. He actually goes into the movie, meets Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's actually in that movie's universe. Where in the movie universe, the in movie universe, everything exists. So Arnold Schwarzenegger is the main character of that movie, but there's like other famous people in there, but they're their characters. So characters from different movies who aren't in the same universe exist here.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it says for you. So like you're walking around and you see the effects of all of these universes on top. So it's one place, but it's a mix and it's an overlap of these universes.
It's one place. It's one. Okay, so here's the deal. There are different planets in this area, and so yes, it's one place, but you know,
I say one place is in you're not traveling between planes of existence. It's just that what's happening and what's affecting it is overlapping with different universes and different influences.
Yes. So they're all here. Imagine kind of like the Into the Spider-Verse type deal, where everything just kind of got smashed into that one existence, right?
Right.
And so, you know, they're one of my characters, one of my players, really wanted to meet Captain Hook, right? Captain Hook, specifically the Captain Hook from Once Upon a Time. Now, that's not my favorite version of Captain Hook, but it was hers. So I was like, by all means, like, it's a pretty good version. It's not bad. But
he's in my room too.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So, like, you want to meet this person, like, I can make that happen. And somebody else wanted to interact with a character from a video game, right?
And that can happen.
And that happened. And the character
but
from
those,
the video
those
game,
characters can interact with each other. It's not that you had to go to a. It's not like you had to go to a different plane of existence to where you're going from this video game to this movie's universe. You're just walking from his house to his house.
Yeah, but think about it. Like, the character in the video game was a pirate, and Captain Hook's a pirate.
So they were both pirates,
and they were both pirates, and they knew each other, and they've met before, and they've hung out before, and they just exist in this world. Now,
I like that.
You know, like, all of them have their skills, their abilities, all the things that they know how to do as their own characters, right?
Right.
And those things may be exactly how they were in their original story, and they might not be. You know, maybe they were at one point, but it changed for one reason or another. Maybe you're not interacting with them at that same point in their timeline where they were that person.
And that's one of my favorite things too, because I do the same thing. I mean, obviously, there's the trope that all DMs are plagiarists, and we just take all of our favorite, our favorite stuff. And you know what? I don't care. Honestly, go at it.
I'm telling you that out the gate. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Because you know what? Let's face it. Like, not everybody can be created to create a fresh fantasy world. And let's face it. Like, there's only so many things that can be unique. Everything's been outplayed. The idea of taking in your own, like, pop culture references, I say go at it. And however you do it, don't worry, right? Like, I'm on the side where if you do it word for word, if you're literally just straight plagiarizing it, I'm down for it, because you know what? That makes it easy. Because your reference material doesn't change. Now, for me, it's a lot harder. Most of my favorite pop culture, everything I have ever geeked over is in my realm in some way or another. However, 90% of the time, it had to be altered in order to fit in my world, my in-game physics, my storylines. So I take lots and lots of creative liberty. So I have tons of NPCs, I have locations, I have events that either can or have or will take place. I have so many things. I mean, even some of my mechanics, even like how my magic works in my realm, is completely based off of different references. But they're all tweaked to be personalized for me. So I can say they're based off of this, but it's not going to be a word for word translation, right?
Exactly. It's not going to be a one-to-one.
And that's what I think is so great, and I think that's what makes better DMs. Because if you're trying to, like, if you love the D&D references and you're going off of the D&D material in the books, that's great. You know what I mean? But that is no different than like me, who a lot of the way that I have decided how magic works in my realm in terms of its influence, and how I've even broken down some of my my own magical classes, like the ones I've created myself. Those are the reason why they broke out into that way, was because my realm is heavily influenced off the Dresden Files series, and how magic works in that universe.
Very good series.
And I love it. I love how they explain magic. So I wanted to incorporate how that magic is explained, but I wanted it to make sense on a D&D level, and I wanted it to make sense in my world. So I actually split out how magic works. So you have, the standard D&D classes, but I also created several other classes, and I try to balance them out in terms of how do they work with magic, how does that leveling work. And then, again, they're all still in development, but I think that pop culture references can make games a lot better, because it makes DMs more comfortable and more confident. And that right there makes a game a lot more fluid and more fun. Because when you're stopping every 5 minutes to argue about a rule, or to check a rule, or to decide if you want to follow a rule, it's so much different than when the DM's like, no, it's beautiful and I love it, and if you want to argue, that's fine, but let's just keep playing. You know what I mean? Like, when you are in your zone as a DM, I think is when you get the best gameplay. And some of the best DMs I've ever watched have their own way of incorporating what they are passionate about, right? And that's the other thing. It's about that passion as being a DM. If you're not incorporating those things that you're passionate about in real life, then how are you expecting to show that passion as a DM?
I think for me, a really big part as well, and this is my players are so integral in the creation of my world. Like I think I talked about it a little bit last time when I was here, but when my players are playing with me, they are rendering the world as they explore it. Everything that they desire to interact with, they desire to seek, they desire to create, is what births what's here in the first place. Like, I obviously insert the things that I am interested. Every single character that I've ever created and been as a player is an NPC in my world, right? And some of them have seen those NPCs at the earlier stage in their life or the later stages in their life, right? And so one of my players, she came in and wanted to be a paladin, but she wanted to be a paladin of a religion that didn't exist. So she created it.
Boom.
She was the first paladin of the Toast religion.
Hey, there you go.
And her character,
and that's fantastic. I love that.
Her character was Toaster Boy, right? And it was the coolest thing, and Toaster Boy has been heralded, and there's other games that we've had in completely different gaming groups that have never interacted with those people before, who are now seeing crusaders of the Toast religion.
Yeah,
like,
and they can become followers.
And the Toast religion has blossomed into something that is huge, and it's all because this player decided to bring it into existence.
That's hilarious.
And that's how my world goes. It is you are the dominoes. Whatever it is you feel like knocking over, well, guess what? This work of art is now going to be created as a result. And it's one of my favorite things in what I call my session zeros, where all the people that are going to be playing in whatever given game
Yeah.
just get together and start building and creating their characters. Because as I'm watching you create whatever it is that you want, right, I am now weaving your backstory that you start talking about into their backstory that they're talking about, and like they're all connected, because I feel it's really important to have that synergy with my players, so that they actually have a reason to be there with each other, instead of just like we were talking about a little bit last time, instead of just like being jerks to each other and trying to do all this PvP crap.
And that's why, yeah, I tend to, as a DM, I will always give the players that option. Like, if you all want to know each other, great, and if you don't, that's fine. But like, you have to let me know if you need a reason to have grouped up or not, right? Like, because I don't like the idea of like just it's in the air. Well, you're together now.
Yeah,
like, you're a party. No, it's like either you guys want to know each other, or you're asking me to figure it out. But we need to establish why you're together. Like, it's always very important. I don't like just having it just because.
That is a huge.
And I mean, I've done everything from random happenstance. I just started gaming solo with other people in the room until I just started one by one, because no one wanted to know what they were doing. So I'm like, okay, what are you all doing right now? And then I just started gaming somebody, and they're like, what are you doing? Okay, boom, now you two are in the same room. But that can even be fun too, because if you're just kind of doing one of those where you're just slowly introducing the characters, they introduce themselves, and then that introduction can sometimes be it. Like, I had two guys, they got into a bar fight together and became best friends because like there was a bar fight and they just started fighting side by side. And they were like, not too bad. Like, and then that was it. They just moved on together because they created their intro, right? But you're right. It's important to establish some sort of reasoning, because it's not just for RP purposes, but it's that whole concept of getting people to invest into their own character and into the gameplay, right? Because it's one thing to just go through the motions and play the game, but when you get them invested and you get them enjoying like the characters, enjoying the interactions, that's when you're going to have, I think, a lot more creativity happen, because they're looking for it, right? When you're just playing the game to just solve the puzzles and beat the bad guys and min-max, again, you kind of just lose the reason why you're doing it, and you're just trying to win. Whereas if you get people having fun and goofing off, it's not about winning. It's about, well, what can we get away with next? Like, what can we laugh about, or what can we accomplish next? And that's just where I really like it.
Yeah, and so
but you were talking about how like you talk about how unfolding everything with your characters out in front of them, right? Like they're basically generating the universe as they're walking forward through it. So when it comes to things like something so powerful as magic, trying to stay a little bit on topic here, but when it comes to magic operates completely differently in your realm than it does in mine. We've talked about this a bit, and we'll have to talk about more on stream. I need to really go into how my magic works, but in terms of, we both agree, even creating magic, either whether it's creating spells, magical items, that's always a good thing. But where do you fall in terms of like, the two biggest questions I always have is when and how. When someone wants to create something, my biggest questions are when and how. When should it be allowed in terms of like player level, character level, a point at the story time, like in their adventure? Like, I'm always trying to figure out like when is an appropriate time to allow them to start doing something, especially so important as like messing with magic. But also like how do you go about, like we were talking earlier about the item creation, right? Like finding the materials, at least asking them how it would be built, what it would be made out of, how would they talk to people. But magic is different, right? Like magic is, you can't just be like, oh, I want this spell to do this. Like, so when do you find it appropriate to start that process, and what are some of the steps you take to put them through some sort of a challenge or whatever it is to create a magical spell?
What I will say is your important questions are when and how. I would say my most important question is why. Because why will tell me the when and the how. And what I mean by that is, if you are trying to do something, say you want burning hands to be chilly hands and do cold damage instead of fire damage, right? My question, first of all, is why? Are you just happen to be in a situation where you would really be advantageous if it was cold instead of fire damage, and so you just want it to be different right now? Well, I'm not going to just give it to you and let you do that right now.
Right. You're not going to change a whole spell just for the advantage.
But say, hypothetically speaking, you are one of my players just used absorb elements, right? And the element that they absorbed is electricity, right? And their reasoning is, hey, I have this electric energy in me, but I want to basically, and they know one of the enemies that they're going up against is like resistant to fire damage or something, so they don't want to use fire damage. But they're all grouped up perfectly for this cone, right? And they have this electric energy surging through them, and they want to use the Burning Hands spell that they know, but they want to release the electric energy that they have stored up from this. Let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens.
I'm on board with you. See, in situations like that, I am always down. Like, this is where I always say, like, if you can make it make sense to my in-game physics, that is something that, like, right there. So you've asked me on the side, like, what do I mean when I say physics, like in-game physics? I mean, and I usually just mean that as in, like, essentially either mechanics, or when I say in-game physics, it's how do you as a DM explain how and why things happen. Now, that could just be because, like, if you're a DM that just says it's just because, hey, that's your physics. My physics are a little bit more, I have to have reasonings that have layers, right? So that right there is a perfect explanation that would work in my realm. In my realm, in terms of the way physics work in my realm, if you have a ability with magic and something like that were to happen, you also have the ability to get infused with a certain, with different abilities. In that moment, in that one moment, yeah, you know what? Magic's weird. Shit happens. Players are unique beings in my realm as well. Yes, totally makes sense that in a moment of adrenaline and action and pure just focus, sure, roll a dice. Granted, it may not perfectly work, but I'm like, yes, the reasoning is perfectly sound. You're so full of a different type of magic, but you know how to release magic. There should be a little bit of opportunity. But
is exactly.
But if you were to say, "Oh, I just want to do this now. I just want to be able to make it," it's like, okay, well then.
If they try and start spamming it later and be like, "All right, absorb elements," and I'm gonna be like, "Is that?"
And then there's that whole question of like, okay, well now you found a loophole, but how do you balance that loophole?
And that's what I mean is like, okay, there is a catalyst in certain moments in time in this game, right? Which is what I believe a lot of the times we allow roles to represent for us. Like every specific moment, like that not every mother that tries to lift a car off of her child is going to be successful.
True. But it can happen, absolutely.
But it does happen, right?
There's always an opportunity to let the amazing happen.
When you let something cool happen, and I'm like, I don't even care. Like, the gods are smiling on you right now. This happens. Right? Because of whatever, because of a moment of inspiration, whatever the case may be. I'm here for that. But again, people trying to take advantage of it, it's not going to work the same. It doesn't, because those are my mechanics. It doesn't make sense for it to just be a spammable thing.
It was the stars aligned kind of thing.
And so when you try it again, it doesn't work, right? You roll, it's not enough, right? And you're out here consciously, because like, I'll think about it a lot of the times when you do something right on accident, right? And then you try to repeat it, you fail probably over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Trying to repeat that same thing you did perfectly on accident, right? Say you just throw the basketball and it just swishes.
Yeah, you can't just do it now.
And then, no. Like, that's not what's going to happen. And so you have to go through the process of honing that. Right. And that's where that creation... So, like, I will allow anything to spark something in you. I will allow whatever it is to oh my gosh.
So spontaneous and in the moment things are better. So what would you do?
But that starts the engine, and then you move the process. So that would be the why that leads into the how and when.
So what if you had someone who wanted to just create a spell that doesn't exist? Like, it's not a D&D spell. They say, hey, I want to do this cool thing, but there's no spell in the book that does it. So that's a different way of creation, right? It's one thing to, like, in the moment, do something different. But let's say you just had someone who's like, hey, look, I've read all the fire spells. Fireball, boring. Burning Hands, situationally cool. But I want to be able to, like, say, touch a wall and, like, have a 10-foot line of fire go wherever I want. Like, basically, kind of like I just want to be able to control, like, is whatever surface I touch, I want to be able to do a line of fire up to 10 feet in any direction. So I was like, I could do like an image on the
around
wall, or I could touch a wall and go light every torch within 10 feet. Just something cool like that. What would be the way that they would have to, like, would you allow that idea? Or would you allow them to try it?
For me, I would first ask them, is it important to me, is it important to you that your character created this? Right? If
what do you mean by
yes,
that?
what I mean by that is like, okay, so say we have Johnny Spells over here, and Johnny Spells is the character, all right? Now, Matt is playing Johnny Spells. Okay, Matt, you want to create this really cool fire spell. Do you want Johnny Spells to be the one that is the arbiter, the creator of said fire spell? Or do you want this fire spell to just have existed in the world, and then Johnny Spells now gets to learn it? Like any other spell.
Fascinating. I like that.
So if it doesn't matter if Johnny Spells is the creator, then you just submit to me this spell. Honestly, here's the deal. I love homebrew stuff. I freaking love it. I'll go on the internet scouring just whatever homebrew spells, like whatever homebrew classes. You come into I play technically 5th edition, but it's very loosey-goosey. Like, I call it ghetto D&D, all right? We just fly by the seat of our pants. But whatever resource out there, if I like it, maybe I'll need to tweak it a little bit to balance it. But for the most part, it's cool in my world. And so if you have a dope spell idea, please submit it to me. And if I like it, I want it in my world.
The idea is that you draw the line with, if I'm understanding and kind of just extrapolating for what you haven't said, if they want to essentially own it, essentially only their character, or they can control how it's used in your world, it would take a little bit more effort and time to create it because it's something from scratch. But if they created a cool idea and all they want is access to it, you can basically retroactively say, fine, I now know who created it. It's available to anyone. And I know in my world where it goes, and sure, here's a scroll of it. So you're more, not necessarily right then and there, but the idea is that they have to decide if they want to be if they always want to be able to call back and say, this is the person that created it, if they want to have some sort of benefit, or if they truly want it to be theirs, what would you do?
So we'll put it this way. Like, some people, like, if you created a spell, like, it's honestly a gem from your mind. Like, to me, I'm going to give you, like, respect. I'm going to give you your dues. I'm going to give you your credit in that.
The player.
So, the player themselves. So I'll probably name some wizard after the player, or something like that, and that'll be the wizard that created the spell.
So you'll always give the player who created the idea
They'll
respect.
give them their props.
But if the character in game wants to be the progenitor of this idea,
if they want to be the one, like Johnny Spells is gonna be it's gonna be Johnny Spells Fire Snake, right?
Yes.
If you want that, then Johnny Spells is gonna have to figure out how to create a fire snake. Now, here's the deal. Johnny Spells, you know how to create fire, you know how to mess with fire, you know how to manipulate fire, you know how to use fire. Okay, well, let's play with that. What else do you know how to do? Do you know how to do anything else that creates a straight line? How are you gonna go about...
yours would be more role play / like basically like a mind puzzle. The idea is, let's talk it out and figure out how your character will go about doing this.
Similar to how you were talking about creating the weapons.
Right, because it won't be necessarily something that will happen in this session and right here in this gaming room.
For sure.
But as your character plays, you will continue to talk with them, get them to different stages of the spell until eventually been created.
I think that type of experimentation can look different for different characters. So say Johnny Spells is a wizard, right? And he's more into the technical aspect. Maybe he's going to do studying. Maybe he's going to like write different spells, and he's going to be like, all right, I'm going to transcribe what this part of the fire spell, and I'm going to transcribe this part of the lightning bolt spell, because this one goes in a straight line. I'm going to see if I can get this fire spell to go in a straight line just like that one. All right,
I love
cool.
it.
And then I'm going to put it together, and I'm going to try it out, all right?
Okay.
And maybe it'll work, maybe it'll blow up in my face, who knows, right? But whatever, that's how he would experiment. But if you're a sorcerer, hey, maybe you're just like, I want to cast this spell over here with this hand, and this spell over here with this hand. I want to put them together, and I want to try and just manipulate, and I want to try and like use the force, like however it is you would do it for yourself, right?
Good. Okay.
And say you're a druid. Like, I saw this. Okay, I love looking around on like TikTok and like other things for just ideas for like homebrew items and things like that. But I saw this one item. I forget exactly what it was called, but they were these like root boots, right? And it was just these sandals basically made out of like tree roots, and you could like walk on walls and stuff. And like I had so many different ideas of what you could do with this, but like even turning those boots into like a spell. Like I had a character in one of your online servers named Venla,
yeah.
right? And she had one of her arms was wooden.
Yeah, I
Right?
remember that.
And so maybe like she wanted to like do some craziness like that, like stick her wooden arm to the ground and like grow roots into the ground, and maybe it pops up and like does an entangle spell on somebody or something like that. Just be able to do different things with stuff. Like I would let you, you know, see what it looks like to try and work it out.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's very similar to how I would do it. Like you brought up, you would have the player or the character themselves approach it based on the way that they use magic, and that's very similar in terms of the RP way that I would have someone create a spell. Because similar to you, if someone wants to do something that's out of the ordinary in a unique situation, hands down, if it makes sense for it, let's roll with it, let's have fun with it. You know what? Crazy stuff happens all the time, right? Divine intervention, whether it's because you have an infusement, whatever the situation may call for, go for it. But if you really want to do, I don't necessarily so much worry, I don't as a DM worry too much about like if someone wants to create something and just be like, if they came to me and say, hey, does this exist? I want access to it. Like 100%, they don't want to go through any of the work. They can come to me for that, and if it's not something I've already thought about or don't have something similar, I'm not as quick to be like, okay, cool, it exists, you can have it. Unless, of course, I'm just wowed by it. Like, unless it just floors me and I'm just like, bro, how did I not think of that? But for me, it would be more of a, if I don't see a quick necessity, and if it's more work than it is benefit for me, I'm going to be like, it doesn't currently exist, it's not currently available, you can try. Now, what that means is if you don't want to go through all the work, just next time you're, at a Mages Academy, ask around. Ask someone who can then create it. I just don't want to do it right now is basically what I'd be saying. But that really hasn't happened to me yet. More times than not, when someone wants to create something, they either want to full on be like the full owner and everything, or they at least they have an idea and they want to work it out to see if it would work out, right? Haven't really had anyone myself who's just like, I just want access to have access to it. But I would probably do that again if it's a really good idea and it doesn't take me too much effort to figure it out. But if it's super complicated, like if they would just want to do all this crazy stuff, but they don't want to do all the work, I'm like, don't make me do all your work for you. Like, no. But how that looks in me, like, so let's say someone wanted to create that fire snake spell. By the way, that doesn't exist in my realm as of right now, not that I know of. It was just something I just created just literally in this conversation, just the first thing that popped into my head. But yeah, fire snake, I do like that name, fire snake. But yeah, so let's say they want to do that. Let's say they want to be able to touch any surface and be able to make a fire snake of up to 10 feet, right? I would kind of do something similar to you. First off, they'd have to, out of game, write me up something. And this doesn't have to be like a full spell like it is in the book. Like, you can, if you want to, do all of that work. But at first, we have to get a foundation. So write me a foundation of what the spell is and does. Because that's what I want to start with. Like, you can tell me what it does. That's fine. Put it in writing. So there's no... Because it's one thing to be like, oh, well, I want to have a fire snake. And then the next conversation is like, okay, cool. So if I wanted to, like, so I want that fire snake, and then I wanted to be able to change shape. Well, now I want to be able to go direction. Well, now I want to be able to change what length it is at any time. Like, you see what I mean? Like, write it down. Yeah. And that is the foundation we'll work on. And every piece will add to it. So if you're like, I want to make a 10-foot fire snake on any surface. That's all you write me. We're going to figure out... I'll have to work out, okay, well, what level does this make sense at? What are some of its uses? Brainstorm some of its immediate uses, because I'm not going to think of everything it can do. But generally, you have to figure out balancing, right? How OP can it be? Mm-hmm. What can it do? Like, okay, well, if it can be on any surface, what happens if it touches an enemy? It's not like a fire pit. It's not like, they're on fire, but it would do probably some damage. So I start rolling with things like that. So once I kind of figure out, like, okay, generally, what can it be used for? Do I need to make a damage roll for it? What level should it be at? Then you're starting to look at, okay, well, what spell does it mimic? What, does it need verbal? Does it need symmetrical? Does it make sense to only have a certain combination? Because you got to, again, all balancing. And most of the stuff I'm doing live, guys. I don't do a lot of mathematics or anything else like that. I mean, I'm just literally putting it through as many scenarios in my head really quickly and just trying to figure out, like, where would I abuse it? Like, that's the first thing I do is where would I abuse this, right? Like, okay, 10 feet, that means that I got 2 enemies in front of me. How much damage should I be able to do with a tiny line of fire? Not much, but it would be kind of unfair to say that it does none. You know what I mean? So like a D4 probably, that's probably enough. But at the same time, it's not a raging fire, so they probably won't do like consistent damage, because then they would just straddle it. You know, it's not like a giant fire wall. It's just a line of what I'm assuming, like, kind of like a gasoline line.
I would ask, could if it technically can go on any surface, could it from the ground wrap around an enemy's ankle?
And then there you go, perfect, exactly.
Wrapping it around their ankle, hold them in place.
And this is where this. So great. So let's talk about. Let's act like you're acting like the spell, right? You're trying to create the spell with me. We're going out. I would say no, because it can go on any surface, but it would be the surface you initiated on. So if I touch the floor is now the surface I have control over.
Gotcha.
If I touch this wall that's made of rock, anything that rock is, that's where it will go.
So it cannot
but
transition surfaces.
And that's where the balancing would be. Unless, now granted, if you made a really good argument, like you've said before, you would prefer to have something that goes with you. This is part of that conversation. If we're making a level 1 spell, it's might be able to light a small bundle of sticks on fire. It might be able to light a torch on fire. It might be able to do a D4 of damage to somebody. If it touches more than their foot, like if they're laying down in it, they make, you know what I mean? Like I would do all of that, but then if someone says, well, what if that, like I can't transition surfaces. Well, it's like, well, maybe I should be able to. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's the next level version. Maybe that's like, depending on what edition you're playing, maybe that's a spell slot. Like I'm going to bump the spell slot. Or for me, because I don't use spell slots, I'd be like, okay, well, let's make this a power-upable thing. So let's make this have a level 5 and a level 10 version. So level 1 is just one surface. Level 5 is more than one surface, like maybe 2 or 3. And maybe level 10 is, maybe it gets bigger. So maybe it's like a 1-inch piece of fire. Maybe then it's a 1 foot. Maybe level 10 is a 5 foot or a 3 foot flame, and it's like a rope. It's like a literal rope or a snake. Like I would work with the person, because like you said, what is it for? I would look at it from the purpose of what are you trying to do with this and when? And if you need it to do more things, what makes the most sense? Does it make sense to allow this one spell to upgrade with the level of the caster? And in my realm, that would depend on what type of mage you are. A normal mage that casts spells, that doesn't work. There is no, I cast this spell at a higher level. Those spells need to be a high level. There is a type of magician or a type of magic user in my realm, a different class, that can, like, Warlock's completely different. That's a whole different story. but you do have like sorcerers. I do allow sorcerers to infuse more. I allow wizards. I have a class specifically based on wizards. That's a Dresden Files exclusive. Like that's wizard. I created a specific class called wizard based on Harry Dresden's wizard. So raw magic, not like spells can be done, but they're a lot harder. They're a lot more personalized. But most of a wizard's magic is raw force. Like they can manipulate raw magic directly out of their plane of. So if you're going to throw fire around, you don't cast fireball. You literally rip fire straight from the fire plane into this dimension with raw force. So I like as a little sneak peek to that conversation, which I'll probably do on a next one of my future live streams. But like I like to look at when people talk about like hierarchies in my realm. Well, in realm, if you were to ask anybody, mages are the highest form of magic users, because, and it's believed this way, because they have the most fine-tune ability with it. No one can match a mage in their ability to manipulate magic. So when it comes to spells and things that manipulate magic, like using text and using verbal, symmetrical, and components.
Would you say that gives them the most diversity of all the magic users? They can do the most with it?
Not necessarily. It just means that they have the most control over it. They can do the most fine-tune...
Specific,
anything. They can make it do exactly what they want. But you want to talk about raw power, like throwing fists? Like, no one can match the subtlety and the technique of magic that a mage can. But you want to talk about just throwing raw punches? No one matches a wizard in my realm. A wizard, I mean, I don't care how you manipulate that fireball spell. A wizard will outdo you throwing fire. Period, end of story. Just raw. But they can't control it nearly as well. Theirs is literally just, It takes a wizard years and many levels to, like, for a wizard to do a regular just fireball would take them like beyond level 5 to control, to basically to do what like a normal fireball spell could do. That any wizard could cast. Right? Any wizard can learn the fireball spell, and it's just that powerful. For a wizard to control themselves to be that specific and that consistent would be beyond, like, probably closer to level 10. But doesn't mean that they can't throw fucking punches.
Yeah.
And they have
And the punches
wizards,
they can throw or knock you down.
and wizards have access to just all of that raw magic and can do different things. So wizards can do things that mages couldn't, but vice versa. Same thing with sorcerers, can do different things. Warlocks, no, warlocks are different. In my realm, warlocks are the only ones that can multi-class beyond 3 classes, and they're the only ones that can multi-class in multiple magic forms and in all magic forms. We'll get into that in a different one, but they have caps, so it's kind of fun. But yeah, so I do. Intriguing. But again, one thing that's also in my realm is that's just like pure. If you were to talk to people about how magic works, like, yeah, if you wanted things to be done with magic, mages. If you want raw force, you have wizards. But at the same time, the absolute power in my realm in terms of magic, the absolute nothing beats like the pyramid, the absolute top form of magic in any respect is music in my realm. So if you are a bard, by all technicality, you are the strongest magic user, period.
Okay, so the question is, and here's the mentality. All right, so is can you have a bard that is a wizard?
Yes, you can multiclass.
But so that's multi-classing.
Yes.
So okay, see, that's my question. Is like, I'm thinking like, okay, I am a male that is a martial artist, right? So like that's not multi-classing. That's just I am.
You are two different things.
I am both of those things, right?
Correct.
But that's not what's happening. You would be those two things would be side by side. Not
those would be two disciplines. Now, a multi-classer could attempt to blend disciplines.
So a bard is a type of magic user, just like a mage is a type of magic user.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I split it out because you have mages, which is the traditional like D&D type of wizard,
right?
Which is basically spells, scrolls, magic items.
These are the ones who usually have a spell book that they do all their stuff out of.
And then you have sorcerers. I like to call these my tinkerers. I break down sorcerers in my realm as a different kind of class, where a sorcerer. So all of my mage classes, I'll have to do this actual live stream, but basically all my I break it down because of the way magic works in my realm. Magic has hierarchy. It has kind of like it's an old school mentality of like the weave.
Yes.
Back in old school D&D, the weave, and then how you interact with the weave is how you do magic. I've just expanded upon that because of the way that I like how magic works in the Dresden Files. So you have mages who are more about like the potions. You have, spells, scrolls, things like that. Then you have sorcerers, which are... Okay, so mages, it's all about where they pull magic from. So mages, they're pulling magic from outside of them. Mages are infusing things, the spells, all that stuff is they're manipulating the magic, and they're able to manipulate it with the words.
Magic of like the energy that's just out there.
Yeah, they're able to.
Like
that's why they can craft it so perfectly, because they have, they have words. They have material components. They have symmetrical components, verbal components. They can write it down. All of these things manipulate the magic and to do what they want. Sorcerers manipulate magic through them, but they can only imbue things. So whereas mages can craft magic, pull magic, hold magic, and release magic all from outside of them, a sorcerer can take magic and imbue it into something. So in my realm, a sorcerer has to create a spell, literally create it every single time. So like one of my favorite examples is like let's say you're locked in a jail cell. Mm-hmm. Now, and all of them lose. All of them lose their abilities, just like in D&D. If a mage is knocked out, they lose their memorization. So each one has their own recoveries and everything. So a sorcerer doesn't have memorization, but what he needs is materials. He has to have materials. So what a sorcerer can do is the same amount of time where a mage would have to like prep a spell, he can take bits and pieces from of the world around him. You know, maybe he gets a drop of water or a piece of wax and a string, and he ties the string around the piece of wax while muttering his like spell and focusing, and maybe he knows of the invisibility spell. So he can take this wax and roll it up in like a little piece of string, and then maybe he adds a feather to it. And while he's doing all that, then he creates it. And then boom, this little tiny trinket that he's made is his memorized invisibility spell. And at any point, he can just pop it out, and boom, he casts it. Now, if he loses that item, it's just like
forgetting your spell.
If you find the item, you can. And then I also have like a time frame. You know, that item only is imbued for 24 hours. You have to re-imbue it every day or recreate it. If you lose it, you lose it.
Now, can more powerful sorcerers imbue things for longer?
Yes.
Is it possible for a sorcerer to get powerful enough to imbue something indefinitely?
Yes. So, again, different ways that power works. Just like mages can just keep creating more and more powerful spells. So you have wizards who are all about forcing... They take magic from all around them, and it comes through them. So mage manipulates the magic outside, forms it, and releases it all outside of their body. A sorcerer, from them, they channel it into them, goes into an item. A wizard channels it into themselves, they manipulate it, and then they release it. They are the conduit.
So instead of having like a trinket like a sorcerer would, something that they create, they're
the wand, essentially. Yes. So mages use wands and spells, sorcerers create the wands, and then the mage is the wizard is the wand.
So do wizards not have focuses like staves or wands or anything like that?
They absolutely can, and it does benefit them.
Interesting.
But they are the focal point. The magic flows. That's why being a wizard is
it's
a
almost
lot
like
more...
lightning hitting you and going out of...
And it's why one of my balancing techniques is it's more about like wizards don't have like spell slots. You don't have a number of spells you can do. It's all more exhaustion based. The more you do, the more you can't do. So you throw out too many heavy spells, you're going to start throwing disadvantages on everything you do. You're going to start being able to have less AC. You're going to move slower. You are going to get to the point to where you'll pass out because you've thrown too much. Your body literally is weakening because it just can't handle. So again, different reasons why a mage can just sit there and run out all their spells and be fine. A wizard, by the time they run out of all their magic, they're going to be passing out because they have to recover. But a sorcerer doesn't have that. But they have to have their items. So I like this because if I had a whole party full of people, I've always thought about this. Like, again, how they lose spells is different. If you have a whole party that gets knocked out, thrown in a jail cell, well, the mage is going to wake up, and if he doesn't have his book, he's fucked. The sorcerer's going to wake up, and if he doesn't have his items, he's fucked. A wizard's going to wake up, and he has to wait until he's fully clear-headed before he can use his magic. So if the mage is ready, but he's lost all his spells and he doesn't have his spell book, he's completely fucked. The sorcerer can immediately start creating a new item with whatever's around him. He can just start making his magic again. The wizard will just have to wait to stop being groggy for so many rounds, and then his power's back instantly. So, because his is all about his mental focus. So, and I also have for like wizards, depending on how you get knocked out, will depend on how hard it is for you to get your magic back. You know what I mean? If you just knock out from exhaustion, if you just get, if you just pass out, it's one thing. If you get knocked over the head, knocked out for a while, it'll take you longer. Going to sleep and then waking up, instantly. You wake up and you're just fine. But if you get woken too early or out of sleep exaggeratedly, you won't have access to your power immediately because you're not focused. You're groggy. Your brain can't harness the focal points that you need. So these are the ways that I thought about balancing all these creatures or all these classes because they could very easily be overtaken, right?
So it feels like because of how vulnerable a mage would be without their book, that most mages, one of the first order of business that they would do is find some way to protect their book. And not only protect it, but like, hey, this needs to be like impossible to separate from me.
A lot of mages try. It's hard, but a lot of mages try.
I don't know how easy something like hiding something in a pocket dimension would be, or one of those things where there's in fifth edition as a what there's a certain type of warlock that you can be where you can just summon whatever weapon you want.
Yeah.
Like if even if it's like across the room, it could just bonus action, boom, it's in your hand.
There is something that you can adventure into my realm. I mean, you can have things like magical tattoos or magical like jewelry that maybe people wouldn't notice that can hide things. Like you can have like a ring that has like a pocket dimension or like a ring of holding. You can maybe have like a tattoo that's like kind of like has like the ability to hold items. So you can just, they can't take something out of your tattoo, unless they shave it off.
Or chop your arm off.
They might not take a ring. If you just have like what looks like a basic, very indiscriminate ring, looks like a wedding ring, maybe they'll be respectful and then that could be your book. I'm always a fan of spell tattoos. So I'm always a fan of mages. Now, there's also two types in my realm. You can just get the spell tattooed on you, and all it is just the text. These are usually preferred because they'll never go away, and they're just a spell that you can memorize, which is great. I typically would prefer the other option, which is using magical ink. Costs a lot more. But the benefit of that is because it's more than just memorization. You can actually cast the spell off of you, like a scroll. It's basically tattooing a scroll.
Is it like a one-time use?
Well, so the reason why I do both is just like a scroll, you can memorize it, and then you can cast it if it's, written properly. I like to do the same thing with tattoos because it's one thing to just have the spell that you can memorize, and it's just your ability to memorize that spell and then, again, bring in the energy around you. But if you actually write it with magical writing in a pinch, because you might not have an hour. You have to memorize. It takes an hour to memorize. You may not have an hour to memorize it. Maybe you need that spell to go off right the fuck now. So if you spent the extra time and money to have it done magically, it acts as a scroll.
Now,
and just like any scroll, it is consumed. So you can memorize it as many times as you want, but in that one moment you don't have an hour to memorize, you have an expendable spell.
Would it be possible to either re-ink it or
you can always come
recast it on the ink that's already there?
No, it would consume the ink. That's why it's magical ink, just like a scroll. So it would actually be, the tattoo would go away. But the difference is a normal tattoo, you don't have that emergency usage. It's just a memorizable thing. Right. But to be able to have the magical ink embedded with that spell to be able to cast it off yourself, that's basically just a last-ditch effort.
Do mages in your world have something akin to cantrips? Like minor enough magic that you don't have to memorize it?
Yes, and in fact, what I also, not just normal cantrips that D&D has, but I actually allow, in certain situations, I'm okay with either like custom cantrips or even low-level spells becoming cantrips for certain people.
Like if you use that, if that spell is innate enough for you.
If you've used it long enough, if you've proven an efficiency, or just it's one of those things where if you have an in-game reason to make that an innate ability, I'm down to hear it. So yes, any magic user could have become innate in something. But again, it's all dependent on the class and how you're using it. The reason I broke all these classes out is just because mages to me are fun, and I love magic in D&D. I wanted to create things that are different RP opportunities, like the sorcerer. Being able to have a list of, like, a sorcerer still has to have you have basically access to certain spells of the same mage level, but instead of finding the spells, you still have to go learn it, having known what the spell does. And then you have to go and then be able to make it make sense to me why the items you're using work for that spell. Like a string, a piece of wax, and a feather makes sense for invisibility, right? Like you could justify the wax for the sight, the string to loosely bind it all, and the feather for the stealthy aspect of it. But you can't just be like, well, I pick up a stick and a rock, and now I have metal skin. Like, you're how are you Colossus now suddenly? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But if you wanted to say, I have this rock, this stick, and I have like a tiny little bit of gunpowder, so I'm going to do this, so I can now make an illusionary spell where when I crack these together, it sounds like a cannonball. These are things that I would allow because they're, depending on the spell you're trying to get across, just make it make sense. But that gives more opportunities, more role play. And I love the idea of, again, I hated the idea that every mage, once you're knocked out, there's your spells. I wanted a different type of mage. A mage that would still not be able to just be instantly powerful at any moment, but would have would not have to have that book, right?
Yeah.
Being able to do...
Isn't chained to that.
But again, having a wizard in the party who has access to his magic once he's awake isn't always a great thing if you need finesse. You always don't want someone who can just blow down a door. Sometimes you need someone who can finesse something. So he's not always the best just because he has magic readily accessible. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I wanted with all of these different types of magical classes, is being able to operate with the sense of magic but differently, and have different challenges with it.
I do like that. And I think so
that's gonna be my next live stream, guys. Next live stream, I'm gonna break down my personalized magical classes sometime this week.
I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket for later,
because I have it all written down, and I really want to break that out just for my players. I love the way that magic can work.
I will say that hearing you talk about each one of the different forms of magic, I'm thinking about how each one of those different forms of magic came to be, right? Yep. Just thinking about how every person found out how to interact with magic in that unique way.
And that's why I like the D&D
and so
concept
for me, what I do is I allow my players to have that freedom. And what I mean by that is, hey, you want to say that you desire to interact with magic in a certain way. You want to interact with magic in a new and creative way. If you can give me basically an outline of what that way looks like, and it doesn't look crazy outrageous to me, or if there's a way that we can work together to balance what it is you're looking to accomplish, I'm here for it. One of my players wanted to create kind of like a unique subclass where their magic was just derived from astrology. And so they depending upon different star signs, all the different zodiac signs, that they would be able to cast different types of spells based upon each one, and each one would be
different seasons. They would have different magic.
And they could have different stances for each one, and do different things based upon what's going.
That's actually not bad.
It was a phenomenal idea, right?
Yeah, that's dope.
So I would love to allow my players, if you have a new and unique and creative way you as a player desire to interact with magic, let's find a way to make that work. And
I'm down for that usually too. I mean, all of these are obviously for people who aren't that creative. I mean, obviously if you have something for instance, and we got to shut down here because you got to go soon, but for instance, I'm always down for creating new stuff, because yes, these are things that I've created because I think I would like to see a magical class work this way. But for instance, on a different topic for a different day, you created a whole new class in my realm. You forced me you forced me to create 4 classes in my goddamn realm.
Listen, I really, really, really liked the Avatar, okay? And I thought it would be dope to be a bender, all right?
And so he wanted to be an earthbender. I customized a whole... We're still building it little by little, but I customized a whole class, but I couldn't just leave it at 1, right? I can't have earthbending and not... So he literally forced me to create 4 classes, and we'll go through those one of those days about how I look at those. And again, this will be a great opportunity to show how I take something pop culture and use that as the foundation, but change it up for my realm. So that'll be a good topic. But we've been going for about an hour and a half. I think we covered pretty much everything.
We did a good job.
We really covered a lot about how we both approach.
Not too many tangents, only minimally.
Yeah, so you guys now know a little bit about how each of us would approach building and creating in magic in our realms. Next time we have you over, we'll talk more about items, weapons, maybe some bases, building.
Very dope.
But later this week, I'm going to get back on and I'm going to talk to y'all a little bit more about my magic and how my personalized classes broke out. Maybe we'll just go into a giant rant about the Dresden Files and why I love it so much and how much that actually influenced my realm, because I'm actually it's amazing how many things I had in place in my realm that after going through the Dresden series, they make so much more sense, because I had these ideas and I had things that were just not fleshed out. And then after going through the entire Dresden Files series, everything started making more sense when I applied some of those tweaks. So again, another reason why adding those pop culture things are really, really good, because they can make your current ideas just have more validity or more rationale that you knew but you didn't know. So I think I'll leave that one there.
I like it.
Anything you want to sign off with today, Kage?
You guys are my people. I appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with us and just learn a little bit more about what we do. So I'm about it. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us at D&D Discussions. I'll be hopping on sometime later this week for another one. But until then, keep gaming and enjoy yourselves.
Deuces.
All right, and we'll let that go for 4 more minutes, and then we'll cut it out.
Sick.
That was actually pretty good. We did not actually go off topic too awful bad.
We did all right.
Like,
I'm curious to see how that one sounds too.
We cut back. Oh yeah, we cut off a little bit here and there.
Yeah, but they were valid though. Like they went somewhere and then we came back.
Yeah. No, we did really good. There was one point this was open. Hopefully we didn't really see.
Oh my gosh. I need to get like a little sign over here to be like I gotta pee or I gotta sneeze because I had to sneeze and I was really.
Oh,
surprised.
you can just put your hand just back. Hang on a second. Or just if you gotta pee, you can just leave. Like I gotta go too. But yeah,
Right.
we can finish off that joint here.